Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 157, The Confident Man, How Owning Your Power is Everything. Well, welcome back to this month if you've been with us, which has been all about men. And it's been dedicated to focusing on how we don't talk about them enough in the areas of personal growth, and that we need to have more conversations for men and about men and with men about all the struggles that they have faced and how they have a hard time in their relationships. Well, today I want to focus on some of the markers for the opposite of that, the confident, loving man that feels good about who he is and can be open and connect with others and with life. Okay, so we're going to focus on the good stuff today and how to get there. So what are some of the indicators of a confident man? Like, what does that look like? And again, however you identify or others in your life identify, whatever you want to take from this and use it and leave the rest behind, whatever doesn't work for you in terms of gender and how you relate to that. So it was funny because I was putting this show together this week and I was thinking about how all the things that were coming up for me were actually things we all need to work on. How confidence is confidence. Yes, it's a little different for men in terms of how it looks on the outside and how they may perceive male confidence. But at the basic core, it's really a lot of the same stuff that women work on as well. That's been my experience over the years. That's why the men's groups that I've had have not been very different from the women's groups that I've had. As soon as you close the door and it's private and people can be open. All right, so how does confidence show in a man? Like healthy confidence. Not ego, not toxic masculinity, not any of that, but grounded, calm confidence. Well, the first one that's the most obvious, I think, is body language. Do they look open, grounded, yet strong? Do they take care of their body and allow themselves to be physically strong if they want, but not to rely on testosterone or physique to feel good about themselves, that they can feel strong on the inside in terms of who they are as well? A confident man can relax and be relaxed. He can be laid back in a healthy way. He's not as high-strung and easily offended or overly anxious or reactive. A man can have a lot of anxiety, but we have trained them over the years historically to not even identify with that word and to shun it because it makes them feel and look weak. Men have tons of anxiety that can manifest differently on the surface than women, but it's the same stuff. Fear is fear. He can be approachable. He can respond and not react to most things so that other people feel confident coming to him and opening up to him and telling him hard things and teaching him, perhaps mentoring him if that's their role, calling him out on some stuff when it's not cool. He doesn't have to like it. He can have his feelings, but he is approachable. You know, after many years of sitting with people and talking about their childhoods, how heartbreaking it was to hear how many of their dads were not deemed approachable. Either he would dismiss their feelings and blow it off, or shut down, or blow up and lose his shit when something came up. So approachable can have many layers to it and many aspects to it. But it's mainly there isn't the fear of how he's going to take this and how he's going to react outside of a tragedy, of course. Just day-to-day stuff is what I'm talking about. Can you go to your brother? Can you go to your dad? Can you go to your partner? Can you go to your colleague who is a male? Another aspect is that he can handle failure and has a higher frustration threshold, which means what it takes to get him riled. I think this is a sign of a lot of things, but mainly emotional maturity is the bucket that I would put it in. That he doesn't get easily frustrated when he drops something or forgets something or loses something, or the hammer doesn't hit the nail the right way, literally and figuratively. That he can be frustrated, but he doesn't stop, and he doesn't quit, and he doesn't scream and yell. He doesn't throw things. He doesn't have a childlike reaction, and that's why I said emotional maturity. He can be frustrated, but then he can choose to be a grown-up about it and handle the situation. Hand in hand with that does not blame others or circumstances for what's going on for him. He takes ownership of his choices. I mean, of course, he can vent, right? We all need to vent sometimes and get our frustration out, but at the end of the day, we take ownership of our part, how we may have gotten ourselves into this. Then what are our choices going forward? How do we take care of ourselves in this situation? A confident man would immediately go into that and say, but I know I need to figure this out for me. This kind of guy can own his strengths and his gifts, like what he's good at, what comes easily for him, what are his special talents, what is he passionate about, what does he love to do. But he can also admit where he struggles, and he doesn't have to be a jack of all trades. He doesn't have to know everything. He doesn't have to fix everything. He can ask for help, and that's okay. He can have humility, and he's not going to feel worried that he's going to be judged for that. He's not judging himself, I would say, is most important. He no longer sees asking for help as a sign of weakness. It's actually smart and humble and wise and reality-based. Just because he's a guy doesn't mean he has to be good at everything or handy or understand how to solve every problem. Better for him to seek counsel. A smart man seeks counsel and gets help and learns and is teachable, and that's okay. It says nothing about him as a person. It just says he has never done that thing before, and that's okay. A confident man doesn't take advantage of or bully others. He tries to build them up and lends a hand if necessary. He has compassion and he wants to help. In other words, he has enough self-esteem to do that. He does not have to feel good at the expense of others. He knows what his beliefs and values are pretty much, and he really tries to live them out and to stand up for them. In appropriate ways, not in acting out ways. He can speak up when something matters to him in a grounded, confident, and calm manner. And also, and this is an important point, he has good boundaries so that he doesn't let other people take him out of his values. He can say no. He can say, I'm sorry, I'm never going to do that. Or I need to work somewhere else because there isn't a lot of integrity in this office. And I need to go someplace where I can feel good about working there. He has the courage to be who he is, and that be okay. Even if people walk away from him, or don't like him, or maybe even hate him at the moment. That's the opposite of people-pleasing that we've talked about several times on the show here. Along with that, he can approach conflict in the healthiest way possible. And I'm saying that because it's not fun and it's not easy and no one wants to do it. But he can have his feelings, yet he can be emotionally honest. He doesn't have to lash out. And he can allow other people to have their feelings too. So there are boundaries here. There's healthy detachment. There's healthy separateness. He knows who he is separate from others. So he can hear what they have to say. He doesn't have to freak out and blow up or shut down or avoid or attack or whatever. Conflict is doable if we do it with emotional honesty and emotional safety, I think. And finally, he's open and he tries to be positive. He has good self-esteem and he doesn't have to have that conditionally, that self-esteem that is. He doesn't have to gain it through accomplishment or status. He can be proud of those things, but they do not define who he is. So then the football player who can't play anymore still really likes who he is as a guy, as a person. And if someone quits working or loses their job, they don't lose who they are. Not that that stuff isn't hard. There's a difference between hard and decimating. So those are some examples of what a confident guy looks like. I mean, there's a million things we could talk about here, but I think that gives you a sense of where I'm going and what I'm focusing on here. And that working with individuals for years, working with women and working with men and working with families and working with couples, I can tell you that a grounded, confident man is a game changer in their relationships. They affect generations to come in terms of their child's self-esteem, that mirror their kids are looking into. If they're approachable, if they can be a source of comfort and strength at the same time, if they can connect and have great relationships with their partners and with their siblings and with their guy friends. Everything changes when he changes. Men have so much untapped power. You keep hearing me say that because it's so true. So how do we get there? How do we get there if we're a guy and we're really struggling? We've had some things go on. How do we become that confident guy? Some of this you just can't fake. Some of it you can practice. Of course, you can practice having better eye contact, a firm handshake, being open and try to be approachable. Absolutely. We have to change things on the surface level. The old habits of interacting with others and how we carry ourselves. But if we don't do the deeper work underneath, I think it's going to be hard to sustain that and make it real and incorporate that into who he is on the identity level. See, there are some things that I think that are necessary in order to be more confident and approachable if you're a guy. If you're a person, yes, but if you're a guy specifically. And this doesn't happen by accident or in a vacuum. Yes, there are personality traits, but a lot of it is environmental. Here are a few things that I've seen over the years make the biggest difference for men that I have worked with, both individually and then worked with other counselors when I worked with them as a couple and other counselors worked with them individually. So a lot of this learning didn't just come from my direct work, but from witnessing what helped guys the most in therapy, in groups, in coaching, and all of those experiences. One of the biggest ones is labeling, owning, and expressing feelings. This is a process and it takes time. Guys' brains can compartmentalize feelings. It helps them. My joke is because that's really great. If you're doing brain surgery on me, I want you to be able to set your feelings aside about the fight you had with your partner this morning. But it can make it harder for guys to access them, especially when we tell them to stuff them or step over them or ignore them, and to be brave and tough. So it takes time and it takes work. It means recognizing the many kinds of feelings also outside of anger. That's what we let guys do is anger. Making friends with the more vulnerable ones, such as fear, shame, and embarrassment. Those are vulnerable feelings that historically we've told boys not to identify with, much less express. So to really own and to become more comfortable with different things that they feel: scared, stressed, tired, anxious, joy, ambivalence, contentment, anger, hurt, disappointment, sadness, rage. Then it's all about practicing expressing those feelings with some healthy I statements and emotional honesty and keeping the focus on themselves, such as, I was really afraid something bad had happened when I couldn't get a hold of you. Or I was so embarrassed that I screwed that up, I was afraid to tell you about it. Because I was really worried you'd be disappointed in me. Or, I need you to stop teasing me with man jokes, okay? It feels really condescending. Or I need time to sort through the confusion and figure out how I feel. So he's asking for what he needs. He's expressing the vulnerable feelings underneath, the ones that are really going on the inside. And he can do that in a healthy way. And he can receive compassion and empathy for that. He can take that in trust his feelings, trust himself more, and feel more confident and be easier to connect with. Because the relating is the second part. Practicing perspective and empathy is harder for guys because we have beaten it out of them verbally forever. We've talked on the show before about how to practice looking at situations from all angles and not just our own. Having perspective. First person perspective, which is you. Second person perspective, the person across from you, what they might be going through and experiencing. And then a third party looking on at the two of you having this argument or whatever, and what do they see objectively? We can't be mature if we don't have perspective. And we have to honor all three. It's really important. If you only honor your own, you're going to be selfish and you're not going to get it. You're not going to get what's going on for the other person. But if you only honor what's going on for the other person, you might negate what's going on for you, which is not good. Having objectivity of the third party looking in is great because then you can calm it down and get solution focused and get respect for what's going on for everybody. But you can't just only be there. So all three perspectives are very helpful. So when guys can put themselves in someone else's shoes and say, well, it makes sense she's upset with me because I let her down. It's going to help him not react. He can use neutral phrases and lower his anxiety and shame and allow him to grab some empathy for the other person while still honoring his own feelings. Then his response can be much more mature, I think, such as, hey, I understand you're upset with me, but I'd rather you not shout at me. Can we just talk about it and work it out? Showing empathy, putting himself in another person's shoes. No wonder you're pissed at me. I was 2 hours late and you were worried. Or I get it and I'm so sorry that happened to you today. How can I support you? Or that must have been really, really hard seeing your dad sick like that. I'm so sorry. Expressing empathy, not making it about himself. Showing compassion and understanding for what the other person might be going through. But in order to do that, this work is inside out, like you keep hearing me say, he has to heal old wounds. I know I keep saying this so many times on the show, but it's because it's so crucial. And I think historically we haven't allowed men to have places to go and people to talk to, and for it to be safe and normalized for them to talk about healing their old wounds. We've had therapy available for men forever, but we've also socialized them to not want it, to shy away from it, or be afraid of it. Because they're supposed to, quote unquote, not need it. It's harder for guys, in my personal opinion, is because I think they were supposed to shirk it off, be stronger, be stoic, and rise above feelings about what has happened to them in their life. They were sissies if they cried or shared their fears or how they really felt. And yet we want them to just waltz right into therapy and sit down and be uber comfortable. No, not yet. Because we didn't allow them to just be open and cry and be held and understood and validated for how they felt. And we need to remember that little boys are vulnerable. They were not supposed to be able to fend off adults, to take blows from an adult, either physically or verbally, to be screamed at, to be shamed, to be teased, or to be shunned by other boys when they weren't a tough guy. Instead, they should have been embraced. These are little people with big feelings. Because all of this, I think, created so much shame inside of them and hammered their self-esteem. We see a lot of the defensive, avoidant, and acting out behaviors in men that we've talked about in the last couple of episodes. Those were self-protective defense mechanisms that they had to use, but they caused big problems in their adult relationships. When the men were little boys, they were modeled aggression as a resource. In fact, in some circles, this was applauded. It still is, such as contact sports and wrestling and other types of fighting. But in order to heal the shame and the self-esteem, it's absolutely necessary to heal the old wounds and the old trauma. to extract the real self from what happened to him when he was younger, to honor all the unmet needs, all the broken mirrors he was looking into, so he can construct a healthy, more accurate mirror that reflects who he really is. Then he can share that person with the rest of the world in a healthy, grounded, and confident way. Another area that needs to be addressed is distorted beliefs. Let's take a look at distorted beliefs about men, I think, along with the shame and trauma work that emanate from that, but also come from other resources. Just hearing enough that big boys don't cry, suck it up, toughen up, be a real man, those messages can take hold and drive the bus, even if on the surface the man doesn't really believe that anymore. Distorted beliefs that men suck at relationships or that they can't be good at domestic things or girly things is ridiculous. Men can do whatever the hell they want, just as women can. But what matters is that they need more and more men to normalize it and to accept that it's okay. And I think this is happening with younger generations, but I think we have a long way to go. Men need to okay it for other men, and the men in their life need to applaud that as well as model it. They need to see it in their dads and their uncles and their big brothers and their neighbors and their bosses, and they need to be that for the younger men and the kids in their life. They can change their distorted belief sets that they have to be perfect and always make her happy, or they have to be horrible instead, and that's not true. Men are going to disappoint. They're going to let themselves down, let people down. They're going to blow it. They're going to screw it up. We all do. That's not what matters. What matters is how he learns to handle it with more grace and more confidence and to take responsibility and allow himself to be loved anyway. Speaking of personal responsibility, that is a large chunk of confidence. It's a topic you hear me talk about so often on the show because it is the basis for the show. It means owning it. Because for a man to become more confident and more connected in his relationships, he's got to take ownership of his feelings, what he needs, and own his part in things. He has to be able to know that he has boundaries, that other people have boundaries, and to be able to set them without acting out. He has to own things like maybe his reaction when someone confronted him. Maybe owning his shutting down when he feels overwhelmed and walking back in the room and talking. Or maybe just owning that he screwed up and forgot to show up early and help clean the kitchen. He takes responsibility for the healing he must do as well, and for all the poor coping skills he may have grabbed along the way to survive. He works hard to not avoid difficult things. He makes sure that he has help and accountability in this from other men, so he can stay genuine and open and honest and continue to grow. And finally, he learns about and practices setting boundaries, that they're healthy. So he doesn't have to act out either aggressively by blowing up and being unapproachable, or passive aggressively with sarcasm, avoidance, shutting down, being manipulative, being defensive, all those fun behaviors. So today we focused on the confident man, one who is strong yet allows himself to be emotionally available and vulnerable and therefore genuine. He's able to connect with others. He can share his feelings in healthy ways and be as emotionally present as possible when others do the same. He's the one who has done the work of healing whatever pain has created lower self-esteem, defensiveness, and passive-aggressive behavior. And instead, he becomes so much more approachable and easygoing. Confident men have their insides match their outsides, and I think can create huge changes within themselves, in their relationships, and their communities. Thank you so much for joining me today. May you embrace the men in your life and help them heal. And if you're a guy, continue your healing and normalize it for other guys to do the same. If you don't get the newsletter already, check the show notes at ownitpowercast.com and spread the word. So pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.